I trusted my family to show up for me once. That mistake erased me from their lives long before I ever packed a box. I'm 20 now, but this started the day I turned 18, back when I still believed birthdays meant something. My older sister, Madison, had already mastered the role she was born into, the untouchable one, the miracle child, the kind of person who could make a restaurant go silent with one scream and still get dessert comped. While other kids learned consequences, she learned leverage. We grew up in a manicured suburb outside a sun-bleached southwestern city, the kind with guarded entrances, identical palm trees, and neighbors who waved without knowing your name. My father, Robert, ran a respectable construction firm building custom homes for people who complained about marble veining. My mother, Diane, sold luxury properties to executives who called $1 million entry level. Money was never scarce. Attention was. Madison figured out early that tears bent reality. If she cried, plans changed. If she screamed, wallets opened. If she threatened something dramatic, everyone panicked. By the time I was old enough to understand, the rules were permanent. She got a brand new European sports sedan for her 16th birthday. Pearl white, custom wheels, leather that still smelled expensive. I got my father's retired work truck, rusted doors, 200,000 miles. A radio that hissed unless you found one AM station. She received a four-figure monthly allowance while drifting in and out of college like it was a social club. I worked evenings at a local fitness center just to afford gas, shoes, and notebooks. When Madison decided her bedroom needed a new energy, my parents spent thousands at a designer showroom downtown. When I asked for help covering textbooks for advanced classes, I was told hardship built character. She flew overseas for a month with friends, expenses covered without a conversation. I asked about a leadership program that cost less than a grocery run, and suddenly the budget was tight this quarter. The imbalance wasn't hidden. It was deliberate, like they wanted me to notice and still keep quiet. Madison totaled her car while texting. Another newer one appeared in the driveway days later. Things happen, my father shrugged. I went 5 miles over the limit near a school and spent a month grounded, paying the ticket myself. She failed a core science course twice. Private tutors appeared. I struggled with higher math and was handed a smile that said, "Figure it out." What none of them ever admitted was that I was the one holding everything together. While Madison treated life like a never-ending after-party, I kept my grades perfect, worked shifts, volunteered, and quietly filled every crack they ignored. I paid bills before shut-off notices arrived, picked up dry cleaning when my father's back locked up, planned meals, bought groceries, cleaned messes that weren't mine, smiled through dinners where Madison dominated the air and I disappeared into the chair. Whenever I pushed back, they used the same phrase, rehearsed and smooth. She's fragile. She needs more support. She's still finding herself. And every time they said it, something in me went quieter, colder, like I was already practicing what it would feel like to leave, without a scene, without a warning, while they kept believing their perfect little world was standing on solid ground. It wasn't. They called it independence. I learned later it was just a cleaner word for neglect. Anytime I handled something without help, it was used against me. I was naturally responsible, old beyond my years, someone who didn't need attention because I could manage on my own. My reliability became the excuse. Every success of mine was treated like background noise, expected, automatic. But every failure of Madison's triggered a family emergency, a group meeting, a collective sigh like the house itself was in mourning. What made it unbearable was how they quietly used me to clean up her disasters, then stepped aside so she could take the applause. When she wrecked her car, I spent an entire weekend crouched in the driveway with my father, photographing damage, calling insurance, pricing parts. When she finally scraped a passing grade in a course she'd failed twice, it was because I'd spent months reteaching basics she should have known years earlier. When she got picked up for underage drinking after a party near a lakeside college town, it was me driving across the city at 3 in the morning because my parents were too exhausted to deal with her again. But when Madison eventually graduated, late, barely, from a local community college, it was all smiles and speeches. "We're so proud of how you pushed through," my mother said, gripping her hand like she'd survived something heroic. I stood off to the side, invisible, like the help staff waiting for instructions. I told myself it would change when I turned 18. Legal adulthood, a line in the sand. I believed, stupidly, that once I was officially an adult, they'd have no choice but to see me differently, to respect me, to acknowledge that I was the one who'd kept things running while they poured everything into their golden child. I was wrong in a way that still makes my jaw tighten. My 18th birthday was supposed to matter. Graduation was months away. I already had early acceptance letters from a state university not far from home, partial scholarships tied to my grades and extracurriculars. For once, I wanted a moment that wasn't about damage control or sacrifice. Just one evening where people showed up for me. I asked for a simple party: backyard, grill, music, family and friends, maybe 30 people. I even offered to cover part of the cost with money I'd saved from working evenings. To my surprise, my parents lit up. My mother kept telling people, "Our baby's becoming a man." My father suggested renting an inflatable course for nostalgia, laughing like this was something he'd been waiting for too. We planned for weeks, invitations sent early, a custom cake ordered from a trendy bakery across town, a menu mapped out down to the sides. My mother helped build a playlist that wouldn't embarrass me in front of my friends. I invited everyone who mattered: my closest friend, my girlfriend, teammates, coworkers, a teacher who believed in me when no one else did, even my manager who'd quietly taught me what consistency looked like. For the first time, it felt like my life was real, like the quiet kid had become someone worth celebrating. Then, 3 days before the party, Madison's spring break trip fell apart. She'd been planning it for months, a coastal resort getaway with friends from school, all paid for, all carefully curated on social media. One phone call, one cancellation. I heard her door slam from across the house. Then the screaming started. And in that moment, before anyone said a word, I already knew whose day was about to disappear. She was supposed to be gone for a week. Instead, her disappointment detonated inside our house and took my birthday with it. The trip she lost wasn't modest. It was a curated fantasy, an oceanfront resort on the Gulf Coast where rooms cost more per night than I made in a week. Beach clubs, bottle service, professional photographers waiting to turn her into content. My father had already wired thousands for flights, the suite, spending money. Madison had spent weeks preparing like it was a coronation. New swimwear, fresh tans, designer luggage laid out on her bed like props. Then her friend group imploded over some drama no one could explain. One cancellation email later, deposits gone, fantasy dead. She came home Friday afternoon and turned the house into a war zone. Doors slammed, objects hit walls. Her voice shredded itself, screaming at people who weren't even there. It went on for hours. My parents reacted like she'd lost someone. My mother called out of work, canceling meetings she'd bragged about landing. My father scrapped his weekend plans without hesitation. They ordered her favorite food from a pricey place across town, ran her baths, lit candles, scheduled an emergency therapy session. They hovered, whispered, tiptoed. The house bent around her grief over a vacation most people could only dream about. Saturday morning, less than 24 hours before my party, I was in the kitchen before sunrise, arranging food, stringing lights, trying to stay excited. That's when Madison appeared at the top of the stairs in silk pajamas, eyes swollen, face carefully devastated. "I can't handle a party here tomorrow," she said flatly, like she was issuing a diagnosis. "I'm too fragile. The noise will trigger me." The room went cold. "It's my birthday," I said, my voice sounding unfamiliar to my own ears. "People are already coming." She sighed, like I was missing the obvious. "I know, and I hate the timing, but I'm going through something really traumatic. I need the house calm so I can process this." Fresh tears appeared on cue. My mother immediately nodded. "She's right. This situation has really shaken her confidence." I felt my hands curl around the counter. "It's my 18th birthday. I invited people who matter to me." That's when Madison leaned in, eyes glassy but sharp. "If you really cared about me, you'd postpone it. Family supports each other instead of being selfish." The word hung there. My father walked in mid-sentence and didn't ask a single question. "Your sister needs us right now," he said. "You're strong. You can handle disappointment." I tried again. Cake ordered, decorations bought, menu planned, weeks of work. "We'll reschedule," he cut in, already done with me. "Family comes first. You'll have other birthdays." Something inside me didn't crack. It sealed. This wasn't about balloons or music. It was 18 years of learning, in one sentence, that my milestones were optional, disposable. Whenever Madison stumbled, I was expected to shrink. I spent the rest of that day making calls I still feel in my throat, explaining to my girlfriend why everything was suddenly off, listening to confusion turn into hurt, telling friends who'd rearranged schedules that I was sick, hearing concern in my teacher's voice that I couldn't answer honestly, watching my boss pause, clearly wondering what kind of family cancels a kid's own birthday. I lied to everyone because admitting the truth felt worse. That night, I sat in my room surrounded by decorations that would never be used, listening to my parents laugh softly downstairs while they tried to cheer Madison up. And that was the moment I stopped asking when things would change. I started planning how to disappear. While my birthday evaporated, Madison spent the afternoon stretched out by the pool in a designer bikini, sunglasses tilted just right, posting slow motion videos about healing and finding peace after disappointment, soft music, sad captions. She looked like she was on a sponsored retreat, not recovering from some great emotional wound. Every time her phone chimed, my jaw tightened a little more. That night, the one that should have been full of anticipation, I sat alone on my bed, surrounded by unused decorations, and made a decision that didn't feel dramatic. It felt quiet, final. I was done being this family's shock absorber, their fixer, their background system that only mattered when something broke. The next morning, my actual 18th birthday arrived without ceremony. No knock on my door, no off-key singing, no card slid across the counter. My mother was busy blending Madison a protein smoothie with ingredients I couldn't pronounce. My father had already left for a job site, treating Sunday like any other day, because for me, it was. The house felt unchanged, same walls, same smells. The only difference was that I was legally an adult being treated like a ghost. Around noon, Madison glanced up from her phone and sighed. "You're kind of killing the vibe," she said, chewing through an expensive brunch. "It's not my fault your party got canceled. You don't need to make everyone miserable. Some of us have real problems." That was it. Something inside me didn't explode. It went silent. I realized I had choices, real ones. I had savings from 2 years of work. I had grades, scholarships, and an acceptance letter that didn't belong to them. I had friends whose families didn't measure love in emergencies. I just never let myself imagine leaving. I closed my door and started dialing. First call, my wrestling coach. His family had always treated me like I mattered. When I explained, carefully, he didn't hesitate. His wife took the phone and said, "Your family. Stay as long as you need." Second call, my manager at the gym. He'd been pushing me to take more hours. When I asked about stepping up, he laughed softly. "I can start you at 30 a week. You've earned it." Third call, my school counselor. She didn't even try to soften it. "What they did was inappropriate," she said. "We'll figure out the logistics. You shouldn't be dealing with this alone." By Sunday night, I had a plan. For the next week, I played my role perfectly. Went to school, worked my shifts, smiled at dinner. My parents thought I'd handled it maturely. They had no idea I was dismantling my life there piece by piece. Each day, I moved something out: documents, clothes, electronics, medals, books, the things that proved I existed. I left behind everything that only served them. I also stopped holding the house together. Bills went unpaid, calendars stayed messy, groceries ran out, messes stayed exactly where they fell. I didn't announce it. I just stepped back. They noticed, but too late. The following Saturday, 1 week after my canceled birthday, I waited until the house was empty. Madison was out spending money. My parents were gone. I walked into my room, grabbed boxes and trash bags, and packed the rest of my life in silence. When I closed that door for the last time, I didn't feel angry. I felt light, and they had no idea what they'd just lost. I left the key on my bed with a note folded once. No drama, no exclamation points. Just the truth they'd ignored for 18 years. That my needs never mattered here. That I was going somewhere they did. That this wasn't a phase or anger or rebellion. It was a choice. And I told them not to contact me unless they were prepared to apologize and actually change. Not explain. Not justify. Change. I loaded my things into the rusted truck they'd never cared about and took one last look at the house, the gates, the pool, the perfect lawn I'd helped maintain. Then I drove away knowing, deep in my chest, that I'd never live there again. The relief hit hard, like breathing after years underwater. For the first time, I'd chosen myself instead of absorbing everyone else's chaos. Living with my coach's family felt unreal at first. They asked how my day was and actually waited for the answer. They noticed when I was quiet. They thanked me when I helped. They made space for me at the table without acting like it was charity. I wasn't useful to them. I was wanted. That difference rewired something in me. Back at my parents' house, everything I'd quietly held together started collapsing. Within weeks, cracks showed. Bills went unpaid, Deadlines passed. Credit cards racked up fees. My mother lost a major client because no one reminded her of a critical date I used to track. The house slipped into disorder fast once the invisible system disappeared. And then there was Madison. Without me buffering her failures, my parents had to face them head on. She failed 2 classes and landed on academic probation. No quiet tutoring sessions, no late-night explanations. She didn't know how to study because she'd never had to learn. My father hired a private tutor, $75 an hour, but she skipped sessions saying she didn't connect with the vibe. Then came the arrest. Again. This time for shoplifting at an upscale boutique in a wealthy shopping district. Makeup, accessories, a purse worth hundreds. She'd been doing it for months, not out of need, but entitlement, the thrill. My father hired an attorney. Thousands vanished into legal fees and restitution. The worst discovery came later. With me gone, no one smoothed the numbers. No one covered gaps. They finally noticed money missing. Cash from my mother's purse, charges on my father's cards, forged checks. It went back years. Over $35,000 gone. Enough to pay for my education. Enough to change their future. They confronted her. And still, they protected her. Instead of accountability, my father took out a second mortgage to clean up her mess. Doubled down. Chose denial over reality. I watched it all from a distance. Not interfering, not rescuing, not explaining. Just watching. They didn't fall apart because I left. They fell apart because I stopped holding them together. And that realization, that my absence revealed the truth, was more satisfying than any apology could ever be. My mother started working 7 days a week to keep the lights on. I didn't hear it from them directly at first. I watched it leak out through social media, mutual friends, whispered updates passed along like gossip no one wanted to own. In every photo, they looked thinner, older, smiles stretched too tight. The polished image they'd spent years maintaining was cracking in public. Then the calls started. Voicemail after voicemail. My phone lighting up at night, vibrating during workouts, buzzing while I studied. My father's voice grew smaller each time. We need you here. Your sister's really struggling without you. Your mom and I can't manage all this on our own. He kept using the same words. Be mature, help the family, do the right thing. What never appeared in any message was an apology. Not for my birthday. Not for years of imbalance. Not for choosing convenience over their son. Just guilt, wrapped carefully, pressed harder each time. I didn't answer, because while their lives were unraveling, mine was finally solid. My grades stayed high. I worked steady hours, trained, built friendships that didn't come with conditions. I wasn't fixing anyone anymore. I wasn't bracing for the next crisis. I was present. By the time I graduated with honors and a full scholarship to a nearby state university, things back home had crossed from unstable into ruin. Madison didn't just struggle, she collapsed. She was expelled after being caught cheating repeatedly, paying others to write papers, buying test answers, submitting stolen assignments. The last incident involved trying to bribe a professor. That was it. Done. My father panicked and threw money at the problem like it could still be solved. He wired $15,000 to a shady online accelerated degree program that promised miracles. It vanished. All they got was a meaningless certificate and more debt. My mother's career started bleeding quietly at first. Missed appointments, forgotten deadlines, sloppy mistakes. Clients noticed. In an industry built on trust, distraction is fatal. Deals fell through. Calls stopped coming. Her reputation slid, fast. My father's business followed. Without anyone quietly checking numbers, bids went wrong. Materials were miscalculated. He borrowed against the company to keep covering Madison's emergencies. One mistake stacked on another. Then the neighborhood started talking. Police blotters mentioned Madison's name. The boat disappeared. Then my mother's car. Invitations dried up. People avoided eye contact at school events. And eventually, someone said it out loud. Why I'd left. Once that story spread, it stuck. Parents who'd once praised them stopped returning calls. Potential clients chose other contractors. Buyers preferred agents whose families didn't look like warnings. Their carefully curated image, successful, stable, admirable, collapsed under scrutiny. And the contrast was impossible to ignore. I was being recognized publicly, winning matches, being congratulated by teachers, celebrated by people who showed up without being asked, while the family that had dismissed me unraveled in full view of the same community they once impressed. They'd built everything on appearances. They just hadn't realized I was the foundation. And once I stepped away, the entire structure had nothing left to stand on. Once I was gone, there was nothing left to prop up the illusion. Without me quietly fixing things behind the scenes, and with Madison's disasters spilling into public view, the identity my parents had built their lives around collapsed completely. The calls became constant. Morning, night, during lectures, during workouts, voicemails stacked on top of each other, each one longer, shakier, more honest than the last. My father stopped pretending he was in control. "Please," he'd whisper, "your mom cries every night. I don't know how to organize anything the way you did. People keep asking where you are. We don't know what to say anymore." What he never said was sorry. So I stayed silent, because while they were unraveling, I was living a life that finally felt like mine. I graduated with a near-perfect GPA, started college on a full scholarship, got promoted at work, built relationships that didn't require me to disappear. For the first time, stability wasn't something I maintained for others. It surrounded me. About a year and a half after I left, during my sophomore year, Madison detonated what little was left. She fell in with a guy who spoke fast and promised miracles. Easy money. Investments. A fake cryptocurrency scheme so obvious it hurt to hear about. Using access she never should have had, Madison transferred $45,000 from my parents' savings, their emergency fund, most of their retirement, the money meant to pay down the second mortgage. It vanished overnight. But that was only the beginning. Over the previous year, she'd been quietly building a financial nightmare in their names. Credit cards they didn't recognize, personal loans opened with their information, even a car loan for a vehicle she totaled while driving drunk. She'd learned how to manipulate systems the same way she'd always manipulated people. By the time my parents uncovered everything, the damage was staggering. Over $80,000 in debt they were legally responsible for. Combined with the stolen savings, the total crossed six figures, enough to erase decades of work in a matter of months. There was no recovery, no spin, no bailout left. They filed for bankruptcy, credit destroyed, reputations ruined. They were forced to sell the house, the one they'd lived in for 15 years, the one they'd shown off as proof they'd done everything right. They downsized into a cramped two-bedroom apartment in a part of town they used to warn me about. Most of their possessions were sold or abandoned. Their version of success evaporated. My father's business collapsed under debt and legal fallout. My mother took a job at a corporate firm where no one cared about her past success and no one asked for her opinion. She made less, had no control, no respect. And Madison, for the first time in her life, there was no one left to shield her from consequences. No money to smooth things over, no one impressed by tears. She broke, completely. She moved back in with them. Couldn't hold a job, couldn't manage basic tasks, couldn't function without constant supervision. She became dependent on the very people she'd drained dry. So there they were, two people in their 50s, bankrupt, exhausted, trapped in a small apartment, supporting a grown woman who'd never learned how to stand on her own. 3 adults, 2 minimum wage incomes, endless stress, court paperwork, debt collectors. The pressure didn't just weigh on them, it split them. The marriage that had survived by ignoring reality finally cracked under it. Conversations turned sharp. Silence turned heavy. Blame crept in, unspoken but thick. And from a distance, watching all of it unfold, I understood something with terrifying clarity. I hadn't destroyed my family. I'd simply stopped sacrificing myself to keep their lies alive. 25 years together didn't survive what they'd built on denial. 6 months later, they separated. Quietly, no announcements. Just two exhausted people who couldn't stand the weight of blame sitting between them anymore. My father moved in with his brother and started taking short-term construction jobs from companies that used to compete with his own. Hard labor, half the pay, no authority. My mother picked up a second job at a retail store, stacking 60-hour weeks just to afford rent and groceries. The life they'd spent decades polishing, the image, the status, the neighborhood respect, was gone. In our community, their story became a warning people whispered about. What happens when parents protect dysfunction instead of confronting it? Then, last month, everything circled back. I was in my apartment near campus, textbooks open, finals week closing in, when an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. I almost ignored it. Something told me not to. It was my father, calling from someone else's phone. I'd blocked every number tied to him over a year ago. "Please don't hang up," he said immediately. His voice sounded hollow, like something essential had finally drained out. I know you don't owe us anything, but we need to talk. I stayed silent. We've lost everything, he continued. The house, the business, our savings, our marriage. We're living apart now, working jobs we never imagined just to survive. He paused, breath catching. And Madison, she's completely dependent on us. We can't even take care of ourselves anymore. Then, quieter. We know why you left. That sentence landed differently. We canceled your 18th birthday for something that didn't matter, he said, and we've been paying for it ever since. You were holding our family together, and we treated you like you were disposable. For the first time in my life, there was no excuse in his voice, no justification, just awareness. We need help, he admitted. Not money, guidance, advice. You're the only one who knows how to live responsibly. You're thriving. You became everything we should have supported from the beginning. He talked for a long time about watching my life from a distance through social media, about bragging to people about my accomplishments while pretending we still spoke. People ask about you, he said. We lie. Because the truth is, we destroyed our relationship ourselves. Then my mother took the phone. She didn't try to hold it together. We threw away the best thing about our family, she said between sobs. We don't know how to fix any of this without you. We don't know how to help your sister. We don't know how to rebuild. When they finished, there was silence, heavy, waiting. I took a breath, not to steady myself, but to speak clearly. You're right, I said. You don't deserve forgiveness. You canceled my 18th birthday because a vacation fell through. You spent my entire childhood treating me like unpaid labor while giving her everything. You didn't just fail me, you enabled her into becoming someone who destroyed your lives. No shouting, no anger, just truth. I won't come back, I continued. I won't fix this, and I won't help you clean up consequences you refused to face for years. I told them I hoped they figured things out, that I wished them stability, but that my life, my peace, was no longer negotiable. When the call ended, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. They finally understood my value only after losing everything else. And by then, it was too late. Because the life I built without them, it doesn't have room for people who only see your worth when you're gone. You did it because holding her accountable terrified you more than losing me. The words came out calm, precise, each one landing heavier than the last. I could feel it, the shift on the other end of the line, like they were finally realizing this wasn't a negotiation anymore. I don't need this family, I said, and for the first time, it wasn't armor. It was fact. I built something better without you. I have people who show up, people who notice, people who celebrate me without needing a crisis as an excuse. No one spoke. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, the kind that presses on your ears. I'm not your emotional support kit anymore, I continued. I'm not the fixer. I'm not the buffer between you and the consequences you refuse to face. I surprised myself with what came next. That said, I'm willing to have a relationship, but only under conditions. I heard my father inhale sharply. First, I said, Madison gets real, professional help. Not excuses, not pity. Therapy, accountability, a job. She pays back what she stole and proves she can function without draining everyone around her. A pause, longer this time. Second, I went on, you acknowledge, publicly, that you treated me unfairly, that my leaving wasn't cruelty. It was survival. My father's voice cracked, barely audible. Anything. We'll do anything. And third, I added, not slowing down, any relationship we have is based on respect, not your need for me to save you. I'm not coming back as your solution. Another breath. Then, quieter still. Okay. And one more thing, I said. Understand this clearly. I'm not your son coming home. I'm an adult offering a conditional connection. You earn it. They agreed without hesitation. No bargaining, no defensiveness. Just relief bleeding through desperation. Over the next month, they followed through. I watched from a distance, not stepping in, not guiding. My father got Madison into intensive therapy and forced her into her first real job in years, a fast food uniform replacing entitlement. My mother started drafting a public apology, naming their mistakes instead of hiding behind vague regret. They entered counseling together, confronting the patterns they'd spent decades denying. I didn't rush forgiveness. I didn't offer comfort. Because some damage doesn't disappear just because people finally understand it. Will I ever fully forgive them? Probably not. Too much was taken. Too many years erased, too many milestones dismissed. But here's the truth that settles heavy and satisfying in my chest. They lost everything they chose over me: their image, their money, their control, their illusion of success. And I built a life anyway, quietly, independently, without needing revenge, shouting, or collapse. Sometimes the most devastating consequence isn't what you do to someone, it's what happens when you stop saving them.